Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Mental Matters. The artist formerly known as The Map. And this is a podcast which is all about the matters of mental health. I am Andy Bernstein, the East Coast version. There is actually a friend of mine who's the Andy Bernstein on the West Coast, who I got to know, which is kind of weird. He's bald and he wears glasses just like me. Joining me as always is my compadre, my partner in crime, the great Willie Drinkwater. Our usual hosts, our co-hosts, Kristen Perry Long and the great Beth Stark are not with us today, but we hope they will be back next week. They were MIA this week. I don't know where they are, but they'll be back next week. Willie is a expert in the field of mental health and addiction. And Willie, give us your illustrious background.
Yeah, I've been working in the field of mental health and addiction for 32 years now. I got my start in freestanding detoxes. And it was when I was working the freestanding detoxes, I became really interested in the mental health aspect. So then I did 15 years out of the 32 inpatient locked door psych addiction. And I'm an educator for UMass Boston in the addiction counseling education program. My primary courses are addiction and co-occurring disorders, meaning meaning mental health issues in addition to the addiction. And I do family and addiction, and then I do practicum groups also. And I have a private practice. Yeah.
And you have an interesting take on mental health and addiction because you look at it kind of from your previous background in the world of comedy as a writer and stuff. You have a different perspective than a lot of other providers. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, definitely true. I mean, I was with WBCN in Boston in the 80s, the Rock of Boston, worked with Billy West, Charles Lockwood. I'm a big believer in the use of humor in everyday life. One of the perspectives is, one of the things when people are asking me about different treatment facilities and stuff, I'll go to the website. I always want to see the staff listing on a website because I'm a firm believer that if you're not treating the whole mental health picture, then you're not treating addiction.
Right. And you look at humor too. I mean, humor is a big part of.
Oh yeah, humor is definitely, humor. Every time you laugh, you release endorphins, which are the brain's natural opiates. So I'm a big believer. Every counseling session that I have with clients and stuff, I'll always try to at least wrap up the session with a little bit of levity, whether it's a YouTube video that I found that I think is amusing, or just a story, something. But I think humor is definitely a major plus in mental health, and I think it's overlooked a lot of times. It isn't even thought of. It's an afterthought rather than part of a plan.
And your website address is?
Yes, it would be Willie with a Y, Willie Drinkwater, all one word.com.
Okay.
Drinkwater.com. With
a Y, Willie with a Y.
Yeah, the amazing thing is that, even my students at UMass Boston, I'll email somebody and, sure enough, when they email me back, it's Willie with an IE. And it's like, yeah, that's not my name. I'm Willy. I guess it just goes back to, ever since I was a kid, my grandmother, her whole life would always spell it with an IE, and I would constantly correct her. And, it's just one of those.
Your grandmother.
It was just one of those. Yeah. I mean, there have been times when I've been a little moody about it and stuff, and I'll have a student or somebody that'll email me and with a question, and I won't respond. And then finally, they'll get a hold of me and stuff, and they'll say, "Hey, how come you didn't respond to my email?" And I'll say, well, who did you send it to? And they said, well, I Willie Drinkwater. And I said, and how'd you spell Willie? And they said, with an IE. And it's like, is that the way that I spelled it when I sent it to you? And they'll go, well, no. And I said, well, that's not me.
That's a little diva. That's a little touchy at times.
Yeah, it's a little touchy at times.
I knew this guy. We'll get going in a second, but I knew this guy who I think you actually met him. You may have met him. He was on our old show. But he didn't like to be called Steve. He said my addiction name was Steve. And now that I'm in recovery, I'm Steven.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, okay, Steven.
Yeah, no, I worked with the guy who, I referred to him as Pat, and immediately it's Patrick. It's not Pat.
You know what's funny though? There's never Jimmy anymore. People never call themselves Jimmy.
Well, I mean that's part of the whole PC thing now. Like if you've noticed even with ice cream now, you can't order Jimmy's. You have to say sprinkles.
What's wrong with Jimmy's?
Jimmy, I guess Jimmy has a connotation of it goes back to Black culture and stuff. Jimmy's, it's like Aunt Jemima's gone now, and Uncle Ben's rice is gone now. So, Jimmy's were a reference. Yeah, I'm gonna have to Google it after.
No more Jimmy's. Jimmy's are gone.
It's Sprinkles.
Sprinkles. There's a place in LA called Sprinkles. They actually do cupcakes, and it's a chain, and it's Sprinkles. Anyway, I digress. We're not in Boston. We're not in LA anymore. Okay. All right. So I got a prediction. You want to know what it is?
Sure.
So, and I'll tell you why. We're going to make more strides in mental health this year in 2022. Big strides. Even though the flip side is that everything's bad mental health wise, which I'll let you talk about. But my take is that as a sports fan, you're a sports fan. Mm-hmm. I have been hearing countless stories about the topic of mental health in sports. Now it had started, but now it's really risen to the forefront. So I'll give you a couple examples. So I was just reading about Antonio Brown, the former Pats receiver and former Steeler and friend of Tom Brady's, who he brought in to Tampa. And he just did a podcast that he had no issues on mental health. Probably a little denial because I don't know if you saw this, but a couple of years ago, this guy took a hit that was so hard, his head was on a swivel in a playoff game. I mean, he got hit so hard, and he's never been the same since. I mean, his career has really, he had a sexual assault. He forged a COVID vaccine card. He's had a very long, he's gotten a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? He's gotten a lot of,
bad press?
Leeway.
Okay.
He's gotten a lot of leeway. I was going to use something else, but I went with leeway. Yeah. Okay. And so it was interesting because a couple weeks ago he was playing. He's had a lot of meltdowns and stuff. And so Bruce Arians from the Buccaneers, I don't know if you guys saw it, but he stripped off Arians asked him to go into the game and he said no.
Right.
And he already had a second chance. Arians said no. He asked to go in the game. He said no. Yeah. Then he walked off the field, stripped off his jersey, did a little dance on the field, saluted the crowd, and walked off. Yeah. And then got released. But he says he doesn't have a issue of mental health. Yeah. So, but here's the good news. At least they're talking about it, right?
Yeah.
Then I was reading about a wide receiver from a former wide receiver from Washington State. And this is to your point. One of the quotes he made is, I thought there was a void for men in general and athletes specifically. And he's helping people with mental health. And he said, this is why I got into the space, to be somebody that can work at a high level of quality and care, but who also knows the experience of pro athletes and Division I athletes that go through the pressures of having to perform all the time and being in the limelight. So those are experiences that only a small percentage of the population can really understand. You got to go through it to know it. And then there was an article from DeMar DeRozan, who plays.
I just want to cut in. Cut in for a second. The whole and Antonio Brown thing. It's like, the issue was squashed pretty quick. You haven't heard a lot about it, but there was a specific NFL announcer, commentator, who made the comment, they should throw him in a straitjacket and take him to the hospital. And it's like, you haven't heard any real repercussions on that. You heard maybe some repercussions for one day. But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, he should be off the air. But they're not going to take him off the air because of who he is, and he's a big name.
Better yet.
You know who I'm talking about, right?
No, I think I know.
Former quarterback.
Got it.
Or Super Bowls. Yeah.
Got it. Well, so here's the thing. Oh, yeah. But here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than doing that, I think it's better to make it a teachable moment.
Absolutely. Yes.
And having
okay.
And having a thing where you say, hey, listen, you know what? I used a term that was pretty insensitive to a topic that's affecting so many people.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing to make fun of or point or diminish it at all. So I apologize for using that term.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great that we're talking about, the athletes that are talking about the mental health issues. With Simone Biles there, I had nothing but empathy for her. Then you had that English commentator going, oh, she should just get over it. She should just go out there. He's the same one that stormed off a show in England, and he hasn't been back to it since.
Was that Men in Blazers? No,
that
was something different.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the Englishman's name and stuff, but he was coming out. He was ridiculing Biles for not just just pick yourself up and do it. You're letting your country down, and the whole bit. He's a real jerk.
Well, that's the thing, though. It's like you're gonna, by doing that, you're bringing shame, and then you're not going to talk about it.
Right.
Because the person, it's like, why do I want to admit something personal that I'm putting myself out there, and then you're making light of it, so I'm not going to do anything. And then, you see a lot of suicides, and you see a lot of things because people repress it. And interestingly, that's a good segue, because you're talking about DeMar DeRozan. He plays for the Bulls, I believe. I'm not an NBA guy, but he plays for the Bulls.
Yeah.
And he says, he went on Draymond Green's podcast, him I've heard of. And he says that, who plays for the Warriors. And he said, DeRozan said, nobody ever talks about the situation we've all had. DeRozan said, for one, we come into the league with so much trauma that we don't even identify with from our childhood, but we suppress it and forget about it so easily because of all of a sudden we're now rich. And then added, we're taught to be tough, power through everything, F all that stuff you're going through. You got to get through this. Ain't no crying. You better suck it up and keep going. And then the athlete said, or the guy who wrote the article said, you have to, admitting to having mental health challenges and acknowledging you're not invincible is crucial in helping athletes, especially Black male athletes, make the transition into productive careers when the cheering spots. But, he was afraid to do that. So that's why I think we're going to get on a better path, because let's face it, America loves our athletes. And by them continuing to use their platforms,
yes, yeah,
to keep it front and center, I think they're going to have more impact than anyone else. And I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but I do think that it will happen. Do you agree?
I do. I think part of the big challenge, though, and I know myself as an individual therapist and stuff, is, I'm having to turn away referrals left and right because I don't have the space. And, that's a major area of concern, is that, if you do have people that finally wave the white flag and they're asking for help, will there be people to provide services for them? I don't think we have enough people, to provide the services. I really don't, at least qualified,
Well, so that's a question. I don't know if anybody's ever talked about this, but like, is there grades of mental health issues? Like, in other words, like an emergency room, you go to an emergency room, you have a cut on your finger, you're bleeding, but somebody has a gunshot wound, right? Are there priorities more like?
Well, yeah, I mean, inpatient psych, inpatient psych is considered to be crisis stabilization. That's when you could be a risk to yourself or somebody else. So you have the inpatient level of care is considered crisis stabilization. You want to be able to stabilize them and move them on to a lower level of treatment, so to speak, lower level insofar as crisis goes. So you go inpatient. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, are there patients that you're like, I can't really treat you. I'm not really going to be able to help you. I'm going to refer you to someone else. Or have you?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, there are specific instances. I mean, I know my own area of expertise. Where I'm really, really good is I work really well with addiction coupled to, major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, schizoaffective disorder. And I do, trauma, grief, and abandonment issues too. But if someone has chronic pain, that's really not my area of expertise. Or if someone has an eating disorder, that's not my area of expertise. But however, I do know the resources and I do have the contacts where I can say, I can work with you on your addiction issue. However, I would like you to go to this person for your eating disorder,
Right.
So,
what are some of the things you're seeing right now in COVID? I mean, I know I was talking about an improvement, but obviously
an existential crisis. That's what I'm saying.
We didn't hear you. Broke in and out.
Yeah, what I'm seeing is a lot of people with existential crisis, anxiety and depression. It's like, who am I? What's my purpose? What's my meaning in life? Oh my God, how many years do I have left on the earth? Am I okay? I mean, the shutdown really exacerbated people that had questions about themselves and who they are and where they're going. Really, it really did.
It's
really
crazy.
Has. Yeah.
I will tell you, for me, because I'm a little bit left off, I have been traveling. I have gone to games. Now I'm vaxxed, right? But I've been on the West Coast. I've gone to games. I've started taking class. I'm doing a movie, right? I really have taken this as an opportunity to better myself in this time.
It's interesting you say that because I do have the clients that have taken this time that we've had down with COVID and stuff as self-reflection and introspection and saying, yeah, I don't want to go back to that job I've been doing. So why don't I lay out a plan of what I do want to do and where I'm going to. So it has been a time for people to reset. It's not always existential crisis with people. There are those, and I wouldn't say it's the majority, but there are those that really look this as like, wow, this timeout is really good. I can do a reset with my life, and that sounds like what you've been doing. You're doing the reset where, yeah, I'm making a movie. I'm going to LA. I'm going to sporting events. So you've really taken advantage of it.
I love it, but you know why?
Yeah.
You know what? Thank you. But you know what's interesting is that I do this because I feel like it's a snow day, right? I feel like every day is a snow day, which is awesome to me because I love snow days because everybody shuts down, right? Or everybody slows down. And I guess I become very competitive and go counterculture. And I'm like, okay, now I feel room to not have to compete with the rest of the world. I can do me.
Yeah.
And I feel like I can like my mentality is so crazy that or not crazy, but I have a different outlook. See, I said crazy, but I have a different perspective on it. And when the pandemic started, I said to my buddy Bernie, I said, hey, you know what? I'm not letting this beat me. I will not let this beat me. And I lost 40 pounds too during the time. I gained 40 pounds in year one.
Right.
But I took that off just because, it's kind of like this mental fitness, like really like trying to like just keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
We talked about it, you're like kind of talking about it too, existential crises, right?
Yeah, in a period of 1 week at my house, I lost my gas furnace, I lost my water heater, and fortunately I'm in a position where, I didn't have to worry about the financial end of it. and stuff. But it was like, wow, I really want to do more things. So I never have to worry about anything financially,
Correct. But it's not always about the money itself. It's like, it's like exploration, or like, acts. Life to me is about acts, right? There's act one, there's act two, there's act three. And I think you really have to continue to reinvent yourself, because
I mean, I drive my sons nuts because I tell them I'm at my midlife and I'm 65, and they're going, "Oh, you're going to live to be 130." And it's like, yeah, that's my attitude. That's my attitude. I see people my age now that start winding down, and it's like,
they're mailing it in.
Yeah, they're mailing it in. I mean, I have no intention of retiring anytime soon, because I've seen people that have retired that all of a sudden they're in their backyard and they're drinking and they're gaining weight and they're not doing anything, and they go relatively quick.
They check out.
I like Mel Brooks. Mel Brooks is what, 92 or 94? He still goes into the office every day and writes comedy. I mean,
retirement. It's like, here, let me retire so I have nothing to do.
Well, that's what I had mentioned to my wife, Yvette, the other day. I said, yeah, when I turn 70, I think, I'm going to cut back to 40 hours a week. I mean,
right. Well, here's the thing. I was, so I know this basketball coach, and I got an email from him, and he has 116, right?
Yeah.
At the end. And I'm like, what is 116? So I started doing research. What does it mean by 116? What is that?
Yeah.
I thought, oh, is this a biblical reference? Right? Is it a chapter? No. In his mind, he believes that people can live as long as they want to, and that 116 is what he wants to live to.
Well, and it's not that crazy, because we're at a stage now. I don't know if you're aware or not. I'm sure you are, but they can take cells from one of your organs and grow a complete organ, and then they can cryovac it, and down the road, if you need it, they can transplant it
in your grocery freezer.
Yeah, like, I mean, this isn't something I would want to let alcoholics know about, because they would, they'd have a backup liver all set to go. Hey,
that's
doc,
amazing. That's amazing.
I think we need to put that other liver in now.
But you should see this guy. He's like an Adonis. He's in his 70s. You should see him. He's like tall and stuff. He's like, yeah. I said, Stan, I thought it was a biblical reference. He said no. So
and that's where again the humor comes in too. Humor is such a boost to the whole body and the immune system and everything else.
What can people do? I'll tell you what I have. And you can buy these at Bed Bath & Beyond, but I have a light
box.
A light box.
I have a light box for it. It's in our bathroom, and when we're getting ready in the morning for work and stuff, that's what we have on. Is some people refer to them as a happy light, but it's a Lux light. It has all the color bands. If you go into schools in Sweden, right? In Sweden, all the lighting in the school is Lux light.
And Lux light will help you with so if you're suffering from seasonal
depression,
and you're depressed because it's cold and dreary, especially here in New England.
Yeah.
Here in
you look at
Foxborough, Mansfield area.
I mean, the Scandinavians and parts of Alaska, you're talking 6 months light, 6 months dark.
Right.
And the rate of alcoholism, the rate of alcoholism and major depression are huge in the Scandinavian, countries and stuff. And
so is it in Seattle?
Yeah. So they're finding that this light that has all the color bands of the sun is very beneficial to people.
All right. So on a sadder note, moving on, you've had what's going on in your world? You've had a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah. I mean, in the span of 4 weeks, I had 2 clients that I lost. They had COVID breakthrough. They had both had the initial 2 vaccines. They were waiting for the third one. Both of them were morbidly obese, though, and ended up getting COVID and then pneumonia, and then that was the end of them. And then I just found out 4 days ago that one of my clients is in Beverly Hospital now with COVID breakthrough. Fortunately for her, she's like, she's in her 30s in really good shape. She teaches aerobics and yoga and stuff. So she's on a medical floor at this point with COVID. They haven't had to send her to ICU, thank God. But and then the biggest one is we lost our director of the addiction counseling education program at UMass Boston. It wasn't from COVID. He had lymphoma that he was battling for 2 or 3 years. And last summer they had gone to stem cell treatment. And usually, if you hear of people being treated with stem cell, that's usually a last resort and stuff.
Right.
And they tried it last summer and it didn't work out. They tried it again this past fall and it didn't work out. But the amazing thing to me was, he was still answering my emails, about the students and everything, right up until like 4 days before he passed away. And most of us didn't even know he had been in hospice care for 2 weeks at home with his daughter, who's a nurse and stuff. But I mean, this guy, right up until the end, everything was about the students and the program. Amazing.
That's how you and I connected.
Yes. Yeah.
That's how you and I connected. And he was a lovely man, really, really a nice guy. What was it? Well, let me back up for a second because we talked about COVID and then I want to get back to Bill for a second. Yeah. Is there a correlation between COVID and people who are struggling from alcohol and addiction? Is there any kind of, or is that?
Well, I think the lack of self-care really sets you up to be hit with COVID harder and stuff. So,
because
how do you mean it? What do you think?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is it a mental thing? Or is it like, is your body, like, in other words, if you're using drugs or alcohol, your body,
you're slamming your body. I mean, your immune system is taking a hit. That's for sure.
Right. So you could get it as a result.
I don't know about, you would have to be exposed to the virus somewhere, but I think there's a greater chance that you would be aware of the signs and symptoms quicker. I mean, it would present in you probably quicker than it would in someone else that's in really good shape. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Now, and then I want to go back to Bill for a second, but what are some of the things you're seeing out there? Is it more alcohol? Is it more drug related? Is it with your clients?
I'm on the North Shore and stuff too. And as I've mentioned in the past, with the North Shore is, you're talking a lot of wealthy areas too. You're talking, Marblehead, Swampscott, Manchester, Manchester by the Sea, which, by the way, when I was going to Merrimack College in the 70s, there was no Manchester by the Sea. It was just Manchester. At some point they decided, we don't want people to think we're Manchester, New Hampshire. So we're going to call ourselves Manchester by the Sea, But the reason that I mention that is that, alcohol plays such a role in the affluent society, whether on the North Shore, whether it's the yacht club, the yacht club or the country club. And there, I make the joke, I was from a wealthy, affluent Connecticut town, with Greenwich, Connecticut and stuff, but I was from a middle-class family, but there were no alcoholics, and there's no alcoholics in affluent towns. There's just problem drinkers are those that can't hold their liquor. So, I've really seen a rise during the COVID of alcohol because of the accessibility factor and everything else. But, as I was mentioning earlier, last year, the overdose rate in the United States was over 75,000 people. And the year before that, it was 56,000. So that's quite a jump.
Seriously?
Yeah.
So it went from 50, or no, wasn't it 66? It was really 56.
It was, let me see here. The 12-month period. So for a 12-month period ending April 2021, there was 75,673 overdose deaths, up from 56,064 the year before.
That's really.
Yeah. One of the things that I saw, you're asking me about what I saw when those stimulus checks came out and unemployment came out. Anyone that was actively using, or even those in early recovery that may have had a question if they really had an issue, that's when people started pounding it hard and heavy. The dealers loved when they heard about stimulus checks coming out because they knew that they were going to be able to prey on a lot of people. And then you couple that with an existential crisis. Perfect.
And your kids' existential crisis is too, right?
Yeah,
so you're not.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you see any kids?
don't. I usually the youngest I usually see is 17 or 18. Like
Okay.
maybe like late high school going into college and stuff.
Okay. So going back to Bill Carlo for a
Yeah.
second. So he what was his background?
Yeah, his background. Yeah, it's interesting. He and I both went through the program at UMass Boston to become, for the addiction certification. Bill went through it. He finished it up in 1990, and I was in 92 and stuff. And then Bill went on to get an LMHC, licensed mental health clinician. And then he was the head of a couple of programs after that. He also handled all of the addiction programming at MIT and BC and stuff. He was just a prince of a guy. He was always there. He was always, when we had the satellite campuses prior to COVID, when we had the Framingham campus and Plymouth and a bunch of them, he would go from one to the other on the nights that they were, that we had classes and stuff. So he was always available to the students, 24/7. He was just a really, really good guy. He was a prince of a guy, but I mean, everything was about the students and about the program,
He was a dedicated guy. Now
he was, absolutely.
Thoughts and prayers with his family. What, you also lost somebody else too, right? Another friend of yours with the housing authority.
Yeah. There was Paul Bowman, who was, he was on the consumer advisory board with me at DPH, Department of Public Health, Bureau of Substance Abuse Services, for years and years and years. Excuse me. And he was working with housing for the homeless in Boston. And I don't know what happened. He had been an advocate for years for MAT, for medication assisted treatment, in particular methadone. And I don't know, he had double digit recovery, sobriety. And I don't know, with the stress of the homeless and the housing issue and COVID and everything else, but even in the obituary form, it said that he had overdosed and died. So here you have somebody with long-term sobriety, and the stressors came in, and I don't know if he was talking to anybody or what the situation was, but yeah, it was shocking. It was shocking.
So
it's shocking, and it's not. I mean, I work in this field, so it's one of the sayings that I live by. I mean, I've been sober for 36 years now, and the number one saying I always keep in my head is, the farther you are from the last one, the closer you are to your next. So if you let your guard down, that's why after this, I'm going to a meeting virtually with a bunch of comics from Boston and all over the country, because I know I've been in the bunker here at my house doing teletherapy for a year and a half to two years now, and I need to keep connected with people.
That's what you were saying. Isolate. So for people right now in the COVID, right? Like for me, I've been playing with fire, right? I know that, as far as all I've been doing, as far as traveling and things like that. I know I've been playing with fire. But I can't be in my own head, because if I'm in my own head, I'm in big trouble. Right.
Yeah.
So
well, that's one of the marks of, where are you? I mean, you're probably in a pretty balanced place mentally if you can sit with yourself for an hour or two, and you don't have Netflix on, you can just sit with yourself, and you're okay with that. That's usually a sign you're in a good space. If you can just sit back and be in your own company, that's usually an indicator that you're probably in a fairly balanced state.
Well, I'm a creative, right? So I like to write, and I like to, I do this, I was saying I do a class, I'm doing this merchandise thing. So I've keep myself really busy. I could probably tend to be a little bit of a workaholic, right? But I realized the other day, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stop and smell the roses a little bit, right? I have no deadlines. I have no pressure on me. Right. Isn't it nice? I mean, I don't have any pressure. So why am I going to put put a gun to my head to try and make something happen when I don't, you know, it's more of like expanding my mind and learning more and things like that. But for people out there who, you know, I mean, for people out there who are struggling, with depression or anxiety or things like that, are there some things right now, especially with COVID back again? Because I think we're not yo-yos. So it was like, okay, everything's okay. Now we're okay. I mean, we don't know as a society how this thing's going to go, but what can people do? Are there any things that people can do that, like some people don't want to go to an AA meeting. Some people don't want to do stuff. I mean, what can people do to try and help themselves, even on a small scale, like a step forward?
Yeah. I mean, I think time management's an important piece too. Actually scheduling your day, and you're not always scheduling things you're going to do, but you're scheduling downtime when you're not going to be doing anything. Because people usually don't have any trouble over scheduling work, and stuff. But when you ask them about downtime, that's where you get into difficulty. I'll be working with somebody, and I'll say, are you planning any downtime soon? And it's like, no, I can't afford to. It's too busy. And it's like, well, if it's too busy, then you can't afford not to plan downtime because you're on a burnout pace. So you need to plan downtime.
My sister's boyfriend, he's 56, right? I don't know if I told you this.
No.
He had a stroke the other day.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Brain bleed. My sister, and he's a workaholic.
Yeah.
And he works at home. To your point, he stopped like exercising. He let his hair grow, let his beard go. He just kind of checked out, and he ended up having a stroke. My sister found him on the floor, and he's 56, 55.
Yeah.
Had brain surgery yesterday. He's in the hospital. It's very ICU. So it's like, you don't know. So, but being good to yourself is harder than it is to, be on the grind of working and stuff. So are there books people can read? Are there like
getting into like classical music, even, having classical music, or, picking up that book that you've been talking about wanting to read for years. I mean, I find myself going back and picking up books from college, the Herman Hesse books, and, just really, stuff that's just really relaxing and really, thought-provoking, but in a passive way, thought-provoking. They're not, overstimulating, they just get you, pondering things,
How important is exercise?
Major important. Yvette for Christmas bought me a treadmill. It's right behind me here and stuff. And if I'm just watching TV, I'm watching it while I'm walking on the treadmill now. I mean, I usually do about 8 to 10 miles a day walking anyway. The problem with me is that after 7 o'clock at night, I love my Cheez-Its and my ice cream. So I'm negating all the work I did during the day. But just to get back about, talking about strokes and heart attacks and this and that, I mean, one of the biggest predictors of heart disease is childhood trauma
and baldness. I heard this. I'm dead serious. I heard this, and I can't remember where I heard it, but they said it's the biggest. If you're bald, 75% of the people who are bald have a proclivity to heart disease. I swear to you, I'm not being John Tesh right now on that radio show.
I thought you might be doing your Dr. Oz bit or something,
I'm dead serious. I heard it, and I said, "Are you kidding?" I couldn't remember where I heard it. Oh, it was it might have been Dr. Oz. Look it up, but they said baldness. Is that not a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode waiting to happen?
It is. It's waiting to happen. Yeah.
Baldness. Anyway, go ahead. Keep continuing about heart disease.
I mean, they're definitely. If you're working, if I'm hearing a client talking about, childhood trauma issues and stuff, right away I'm going, hey, so what's your lifestyle? Well, I do anyway, but in particular, more so is, what's your lifestyle like? Do you watch what you eat? Do you exercise at all? And stuff, because it's so important. Exercise, and again, exercise is like humor. You get a release of endorphins. You get that endorphin release. It's like, have you ever worked out and afterwards, you're dead tired, but it's an alert tired. It's not that sluggish tired. It's like you're just like sitting in yourself and you're comfortable there.
Right, but isolation.
Isolation is not good.
Don't isolate. All right.
Yeah, so I also recommend having pets. I think because when you have a pet, when you have a cat or a dog, every time that you pet a cat or a dog, you get a release of oxytocin, which is another feel-good hormone and stuff. So definitely. If you have a dog, you always have an excuse to go for a walk because they want to go for a walk.
They want to go for a walk too. So all in all, do you see things, getting better, or do you see it kind of?
It's staying on the same plane. It really hasn't shifted since probably the first year after the pandemic started. It's sort of running along the same line now with little ups and downs, but it's the same issues, and then, I find people are more anxious if they watch too much CNN or Fox.
I was just going to ask you that. I know for me, I stopped watching the news in last year, this time.
Yeah.
Cut it off. Done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like I've done with sports talk radio. Done. Goodbye.
Yeah.
I'm so much better not watching the news.
My oldest son will not listen to sports talk anymore. He said it just
Who said that?
Gets to my oldest son, my oldest son, who's a sports nut, Ian, and stuff. He won't listen to, Melger, Felger and Maz or any of that anymore. He doesn't want anything to do with it.
I'll get on my phone with my cousin, right, who lives in Seattle.
Yeah.
2-hour calls talking about the Steelers and all their front office and what's wrong with them. And then we get into the whole conversation. 2 hours, literally 2 hours. But it's great because it's conversation. Yeah. And it's not so heavy of a conversation. Anyway, what else we got? We're getting close to.
I think human touch is important too. I mean, like going and getting a therapeutic massage. Reiki. Really.
Let me tell you something about Reiki. I've done Reiki once, and remember our former colleague, our hockey player colleague, who said he went to get Reiki.
Yeah.
And he was using at the time.
Yeah.
And he had to get off the table because he couldn't handle it. I went to that woman that we had. So I go to the woman.
Oh.
I swear to God, she was making guttural noises because I felt like she was trying to get me to levitate off the table. It was weird. I'm not a fan of Reiki. I think it's very strange. She would go, I go, what are you doing? I'm trying to get rid of all the bad energy and the toxic energy. I'm like, I'm not coming back to you. It's too bizarre. I'm like, it was too bizarre. Have you done it?
Yeah, I've done it in the past. I actually did it with a woman I knew from AA years ago and stuff. But hers was relaxing. It was very relaxing. But the only thing from her was, the sound of her breathing in and out, slow control breathing in and out as she did Reiki.
That's cool.
So that was cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Acupuncture is great. I remember one time I went to acupuncture for a while. That really helped me. And I'll never forget this. I'm at acupuncture and I'm wound pretty tight, and I'm at acupuncture.
You're kidding me, really?
No. It's true. It's true. I'm the most neurotic, laid back person you'll ever meet in your life. But this woman, she was an angel. She was the best. She poked me right here. Yeah. And apparently that's a trigger point. And what it did to me is it was like popping a balloon. I went, she said, I have never experienced energy like that, except it's almost like an animal. your energy was like an animal's energy. And when I did that, it popped the balloon. It was so cool. Yeah. So I personally recommend acupuncture.
I mean, just as a side note on that too, I went to a lecture years ago. It was a workshop, and the presenter at the time, she was the head of the nursing school at BC, and she was doing a workshop on alternative medicine, right? And she was like 5 minutes into the presentation, and she started laughing hysterically, and all of us are looking at each other like, what is she laughing at? And she goes, forgive me, I have to apologize, but I'm up here and I'm thinking, they're calling they call what I'm presenting to you alternative medicine, even though it's been around for over 2,000 years, and Western medicine's been around for what, 200 or 300 years? Yet they call us the alternative medicine.
And that's something.
Yeah.
Hey, what about social media? I wanted to ask you, because we're chopping it up, as they say. What is the the social media? How does it affect mental health? I know there's been talks about it.
Yeah, I mean, I have clients who are heavy into all the conspiracy theories and everything else, and all I can do is hear them out, and then I'll say, oh, that's interesting. Where did you read about that, or where did you see that, and stuff. And then they give me, the information. And then when you check on the, when you check the sources out, there's nothing that really backs it up as being scientifically based or anything else. So, but yeah, I mean, you just have to roll with them and stuff. But yeah, I mean, yourself, social media, you read one article, then you're going to get, you're stuck in what do they call it? You get hit with the oh God, what's the term I want, Andy? Where it keeps putting you on to more and more articles of that bent, of that nature.
Oh, okay. It's like an algorithm or something. That
algorithm, yeah, and stuff, and you keep going deeper and deeper into a rabbit's hole. It's really hard to get people to look at their thinking. Because if they're swallowing things whole, it's really hard to try to get them to stop, take a step back, and look at it.
I snooze people, because that's the other thing. I mean, social media are like, my mom falls victim to this. She sees people enjoying their lives and things like that. It's like, Mom, it's a human highlight film, is what it is. It's your highlight film. You're not going to put my life sucks. I mean, sometimes you get virtual panhandlers, but in a lot of ways, it's just, it's like people are trying to portray, it can be dangerous, because if you start thinking other people have so much going on in their life and you may not, it can really take a toll. Would you agree?
Well, and I think the impact of social media a lot of times has to do with the educational, level of the people that you're working with, even areas of the country that, that are more susceptible to being sucked into algorithms. I mean, when you think, overall nationally, the average education of an American is ninth grade. Ninth grade.
It's not.
It's ninth grade, which is really hard it's ninth grade. It's really hard for us to imagine that up in New England here. How many universities and colleges do we have all over the place? And, people
44 in the city of Boston, 44.
And I mean, at least in Massachusetts, you figure, people don't finish high school. Well, usually they pick up a GED. You go south of the Mason-Dixon line, that all changes in a Mississippi moment, man.
I could see that. I've been to Mississippi a bunch of times, actually. Yeah. And there's some parts of Mississippi, like in the Delta.
There, I know. It's like, again, it's like, if I were to ask you right now, what percentage of Americans from birth to death will never drink once? What percentage would you give me?
Have no idea. 10%.
It's about 49% of Americans will never drink once from birth to death.
My wife doesn't drink. She never drank.
I mean, I can show you a 1 mile stretch in Somerville with 104 places to get a cocktail. 1 mile stretch,
Isn't that funny?
And having been in the entertainment scene, New York, Chicago, LA, Boston, they're all watering holes. But
Sure.
you go south of them, you're now in Bible Belt when you go south of the Mason-Dixon. That doesn't mean there aren't people that drink in the South, but you have the Mormons, you've got the fundamentalists, you got the born-again Christians, you got the evangelicals. They don't drink.
No, they have pecan pies, boiled peanuts, human hair, and fireworks.
The interesting thing about the Mormons too, the Mormons own the Marriott hotel chain, which is the number one seller of alcohol in the world out of all the hotel chains, and they don't drink.
That's what pisses. It's funny on our closing minute. What really, going back to sports for a second, that's what really pisses me off right now. Again, I have a lot of issues with sports right now and the way it's changed in the business and the corporate side of it. Yeah. So gambling, the NFL was like, no gambling. We're anti-gambling. Now it's all about gambling, right?
Yeah, now they're in with what's that outfit they're in with now?
Well, there's DraftKings, there's Caesars Sportsbook, right? There's all of it, right? Now they bring a team to Las Vegas, the Raiders, and then they have Archie Payton and Eli Manning doing an ad to tell you only bet what you can afford.
Right.
That's like a don't drink and drive, and it's like,
well, that's like telling an alcoholic just have one or two.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like, here, we put this disclaimer out, and it's like, oh, why? Because you see there's a ton of people, DraftKings is making a ton of money, and you want in on that action. So now you felt like it was the time is right. It's so hypocritical.
Yeah.
It creates more addicts or not addicts, abusers of gambling.
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever.
Well, there is GA. There's Gamblers Anonymous and stuff. I mean,
you can get addicted to people too, right? Is there a people addiction?
I don't know if you'd call it a people addiction. I mean, there's
codependency.
There's dependency issues. Yeah.
There's dependency issues. All right. That's our show for the week. What'd you think? We enjoyed it, you and I. We held down the fort, huh?
I mean, I think it's interesting to get the man in the street view from the two of us, as to what's going on.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, existential crisis. I mean, that's been the big one for many of my clients, and the anxiety and the depression, and just.
What do you think about Bob Saget, real quick, on the closing out? Because, and I'll tell you why. They never said the cause of death, right? They simply said.
Well, they haven't said it yet, but maybe they will. Yeah.
Right. Is it heart disease? Was it an aneurysm? Was it a stroke? Wouldn't they be able to tell that? Like right off the bat?
It depends on his age too. I mean, they would have to do an autopsy in his case because he passed away in a hotel. So they have to.
Okay.
But I think in Massachusetts though, it is if you're under the age of 40, they have to do an autopsy. After 40, it can be requested. So
okay,
I'm not sure.
But comedians tend to have a lot of depression issues, right? A lot of comedians.
Well, yeah. I mean, a lot of times the reason they're comedians is because they take life so seriously. It's a safety valve. I mean, the comics that usually pay the biggest price are the comics that their whole act is a self-deprecating act. They're making fun of themselves, the weight, the way they look, the home they were raised in. And, unless they're getting counseling, it can be really difficult to not have that end up taking you down a shortened life path. So,
right.
So to speak.
All right.
Oh, did you hear who just passed away this morning? Oh, God.
Meatloaf
passed away, but so did another comedian. Oh my God. He just passed away this morning. He was around for a long time. He used to dress in drag on certain TV shows.
Rip Taylor?
No. I know it's going to come up. It's going to come up in the news and stuff. Oh God, who was it? Let me just see if I can find it quick and stuff. But it was a shocker. He was what, in his 60s, I think. Let's see this. Let me go right to entertainment here. Louis Anderson died.
Oh, wow.
He was 68 years old.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. So Saget was 68, Meatloaf, I forgot, or 65, Louis Anderson, 68.
Right. Meatloaf
It's crazy.
70 Meatloaf, 75.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's, you know what I did before I know we're going to wrap up, but you know what I did at the end of the year? I went and did an all death team of all the sports figures that died.
Mm-hmm.
I got a whole lineup. You got a whole lineup right now. And the year before I did it, it's a little morbid, but it's unbelievable how these athletes are dying. I don't know if there's any correlation. Anyway, that's our show for the week. Hopefully Chris and Beth will be back next week. Thank you to our friend Michael Weber.
Thank you, Michael.
Back at Foxboro Cable Access Television, the mothership. And if somebody needs help, Willie, send them somewhere.
If anybody contacts me, I'll be happy to refer them or to give them resources.
WillieDrinkwater.com with a Y. Have a great week. See you next time.
All right now.
All right.